Good morning. This is the place in the service where for some time we've acknowledged that CVUUS gathers on the land of the Western Abenaki people colonized, stolen by European colonizers. The worship team has been looking at this element and other elements of the service for some time and asking why we include it and what form it should take. I've chosen this morning to read a poem by a contemporary indigenous poet, Joseph Bruchac. Please let me, ministers, or anyone in the worship team, your thoughts on the land acknowledgement. Speaking. When you speak, seeing, not through yourself, but through the eyes of the land, the voice you hear is no longer yours. You have not planned the words you speak. Your only script is the indrawn breath that brings you the scent of pine, brings to your throat the first morning mist, brings to your lungs the cedar smoke from the fire where stones are the heartbeat of flame. So you speak, and what you say, when it is given voice this way, speaks with the wind and all things that breathe, all our relations. My name is Becky Strum. I'm a member of this congregation and of the worship team, and today I have the pleasure of serving as worship associate for the Reverend Tricia Hart, one of our interim ministers. Welcome, everyone, on this glorious first day of fall, a continuation of the extraordinary weather we've been having. And welcome to those of you in our sanctuary, to those of you on Zoom, and to anyone who will be looking at this service sometime in the future. Welcome to CVUUS, the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. You are welcome here no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what your background. You are welcome to join us in community as we learn, live, and love together. If this is your first time with us, you are invited to fill out one of these blue sheets of paper that you'll find in the foyer. And we'll send you our weekly blast and our monthly newsletter, and you can get to know a little more about us, and we'll get to know a little more about you. If anybody can't hear me and you need hearing assistance, we have some good devices that you can get in the back from Mary or Richard. This is a great time to turn off those cell phones if you haven't already done so. We have a lot of cards out in the foyer. This is a yellow card. If you have a milestone or passage that you want to share with the congregation, you can write it on these cards, and I will read it later in the service. And then we also have these pink cards that are for more confidential concerns. Bless you, Jen. More confidential concerns that you might want to share with the caring committee. So now is the time in the service where we light our flaming chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, and this morning Griffin and his mom Julia are going to come up and light the chalice for us. And when they do that, we can all join in with the chalice lighting. Thank you, Griffin and Julia. We are Unitarian Universalists who put love at the center of our lives. We light this chalice today to invite in the renewal that comes from being in community with each other.
Our opening words this morning are written by our colleague, Angela Herrera. She calls it, "Don't leave your broken heart at the door." Don't leave your broken heart at the door. Bring it to the altar of life. Don't leave your anger behind. It has high standards, and the world needs vision. Bring them with you, and your joy, and your passion. Bring your loving, and your courage, and your conviction. Bring your need for healing, and your power to heal. There is work to do, and you have all you need to do it right here in this room. Let us sing together the first kind of sort of the second hymn this morning is number 299 in your gray hymnals. It is called Make Channels for the Streams of Love, and it is one of my favorites, but I'm thinking it's maybe not completely familiar to you, but I hope you'll really enjoy singing it, and the choir's going to help too. Please rise in body or in spirit. So I have a story to tell, and I'm going to tell it to all of you, though there are definitely important times when the kids might have something they want to add, so, or not, perhaps the rest of you. This story, which is imaginary, nevertheless takes place in a very real place, in Transylvania. How many of you know where Transylvania is? Kind of, sort of. How many of you have been there? A few of us have, yes. So I want you to imagine, and what are some things about Transylvania, those of us who have been there, that we can say? What's it look like? It's kind of like Vermont. Yeah. Sorry? It's hilly and green. Actually, the mountains are kind of serious mountains. And yes, that's right. And what's another thing about Transylvania that might be of interest to us? Well, one kind of Unitarianism, that is right. In the 15th and 16th centuries, Transylvania was its own country. It's part of Romania now. It's been part of Hungary before, but for a while it was its own kingdom. And there was a king, anybody remember his name? King John Sigismund. And he actually decreed something that no other king has ever decreed before. We don't have that many kings anymore, but for a long time there were kings, and one of the things that kings made clear is, in this country we have that kind of religion and no others. But King John Sigismund had a different idea. He actually said that there will be freedom of religion in this kingdom, in the kingdom of Transylvania. The fine print on that is he actually said, you can choose from one of four. So maybe not fully and completely free, but definitely in that direction. And one of those four, and King John Sigismund's faith, was Unitarianism. So the story I'm going to tell you is about a village in Transylvania some long time ago. And the people in that village, not surprisingly, were Unitarians. And their families had been Unitarians for generations before. And they were happy with that, and they knew they lived in a really beautiful place, but they were missing something. They were missing a church. They were missing a gathering place. They were missing a building where they could all show up on Sundays and other times for potlucks and know that they were together in their religious identity as well as in other ways. So I imagine that there were weeks and months and years of committees and discussions and all kinds of things that happened. But in our imaginary story, there's one particular day where they're standing, the people, on the hillside looking down at the village, and said, this is the spot where our church needs to be. And then the people said, so we will build it. And everyone helped. Some of them were stonemasons, and they cut big blocks of stone to make the walls of the meeting house they were building. Some of them were foresters, and they went into the forest and found tall, straight trees that they cut down to make beams, the rafters of the building. And they also, the foresters, made little wooden shingles that they put on the top of the roof so beautifully and so perfectly and so tightly that not one drop of water got in. There were glaziers, the people who make glass, who actually cut out beautiful little pieces of glass and then fitted them in the windows and anchored them in place with lead. There were carpenters who made two matching double doors that could open to the path up from the valley so people would know that they could be welcome. There were weavers who made cloth, and if any of you know about weaving and embroidery from that part of the world, you can imagine it was very beautiful. It was perfectly made with lace on the edges and lots of very colorful embroidery too. Then, after the building itself was mostly come together, the painters brought their dyes and made lots of possibilities for people to use different colors to paint the inside. And the children were the ones who helped decide what we would paint. What do you think they might have decided to paint a little picture of on the walls inside? Something pretty. Animals, they might have done animals. Definitely flowers. Rainbows. I don't know. If you think of something else, let me know. They actually decorated the whole inside of the building. And at the moment when most of the work had been done and the people were kind of leaning back to inspect their handiwork, one of the elders of the village said, "Let's go eat." Because the elder knew that everybody was hungry. He said, "Go home, have a meal, so that we can all be coming back here in the evening for the first worship service that we were going to have in our new meeting house in our church." So all of the families left, except one. That family had brought their supper with them, and they sat outside on the hill, and they had a picnic, and they talked about the amazing building that had just been built. And after they were done eating, they all walked back into the church, and one of the children said, "It's so beautiful, but it's not finished." And one of their parents said, "Well, what do you mean?" And the child said, "Well, there's no light. There are lampstands." I forgot to tell you that the people who work with iron made stands for the lamps, and there are going to be brass lanterns, but they're not here now. And people are going to come back tonight, and it will be dark. The church will be dark. And the parent said, "Actually, that's not true." And the child said, "What do you mean?" And the parent said, "Well, actually, every family has a lamp, and they're going to bring their lamps and light their way up to the church, and then bring their light into the church and light all the corners of the room." And the child said, "Where's our lamp?" And the parent said, "It's right here." And then they rang the bell. They had a bell brought from a long distance. And so for the very first time, they rang the bell to call the people up from the village. And the family went outside and looked in the gathering darkness. And they began to see little pinpoints of light coming from the valley. And as the moments went by, the light got bigger and stronger, and then came into one stream, and it was all the people bringing themselves and their lamps with them. And they came into the space, and they put their lit lamps on the lampstands until there was light in every corner of that building. And later that night, as the family that had stayed behind and rung the bell and helped to make all of this happen, as the child was going to bed, the child said, "So I think I understand now. The church, the congregation, gives light to its people, but it's the people who bring the light to make it real. And they take it home with them too." That was the practice in our imaginary time. They took their lamps home, and they may not have lit them all week, but all week long they knew that this light, which represented the light of faith and hope and the warmth of love in their hearts, they had that all the time. And sometimes when they were worshiping, they brought them together, and the rest of the time they had them at home and with each other. And they knew, as happened in this story, which has a happy ending, that would go on generation after generation after generation. Our story of a lamp in every corner. It is now time for the kids who are here to head over to Fen House with Poppy. And they're going to be exploring this month's theme of invitation, which I think this story kind of fits with. So our job is to help them go by singing. every Sunday we take some time in the midst of our worship together to do a couple of important things, one of which is to tell you about some pathways to connection, which you could think of as just a nice way to not say announcements. But I actually think it's more real than that, because it's all about ways of how people might connect with each other and with the congregation in ways that maybe you don't already know all about. There are a number of things, so many things that are happening now, that happened yesterday, that happened this weekend with the Clifford Symposium that are going on in Middlebury, many of which this congregation is connected to. I want to highlight a couple things. One is the crop walk, which is coming up on October 6th. Where's Marnie? There she is. Marnie is right there. And if you have any questions about the crop walk, if you've never done it before or you want to do it for the first time in a year's or whatever, Marnie. Marnie's the person to talk to. Good. Thank you very much. And I wanted to say that next Sunday, when neither I'm sorry I didn't say my name, I'm Tricia Hart, I'm one of the co-interim ministers, as Becky said. Neither I nor Christina Solari are going to be leading this service, and that's because Tom Morgan is. Tom is our ministerial intern, our community minister this year, and though he's done things in services, he has not led an entire service yet. But next Sunday he will. It's going to be wonderful, and there will be an opportunity to talk to him about that and all of the work that's going on in a conversation after the service. So I hope that you will come. And Larry Vanderberg also has an announcement. Is that a microphone that you can use? Great. Thank you, tech team. Thank you, tech team. We don't thank you often enough for everything, including microphones.
Is it working?
Yes.
Using church space to display art was first explored over 10 years ago, before the fellowship hall was an unfinished basement. That program never materialized. In recent months, there have been informal efforts to display art in the Ross Fellowship Hall. You may recall seeing exhibits of photographs, quilts, and watercolors. These exhibits prompted a series of informal discussions about reviving the original idea of displaying art. An informal working group has coalesced to form a plan to make the Fellowship Hall a place to encourage and support the artistic expression of members and friends of CVUUS, and to deepen and enrich their spiritual lives by administering the process of selecting and displaying art. We have developed a policy which has been approved by our board and a procedures guide for how this endeavor would work. A few people have indicated interest in participating in this effort, and we are ready to actively recruit people to join us. It's a great idea that we're now ready to create a critical mass to get it going. In the constellation of CVUUS Pathways to Connection, the art display team will be an affinity group, similar to the writers group, the choir, book group, and others with a common interest or life experience. And it will be task-oriented with two main functions. First, a jury that invites and selects artists to display their work, and a logistics team that provides coordination and help with installation of exhibits. We hope to get this ministry underway this fall and mount 3 or 4 exhibits a year. There is a wealth of talent in and around CVUUS, and we hope to draw on this to make this plan a reality. Artists are certainly welcome to be part of this team, but I can't emphasize too much. You do not need to be an artist to participate. When we have enough volunteers to form a viable team, we will offer you some training to show how the program will work. If you'd like to join, if you'd like to learn more about this, y'all come see me after in the fellowship hall. I'll even wear a name tag so you know who I am.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you for that, and thank you for stepping up to lead this timely, good effort. All right, and the final presentation on a pathway to connection is the very Marnie Wood herself coming up to talk about radical love.
Good morning, everyone. I first would like to share with you that I know many of you in this room have experienced our amazing way in which we spread radical love amongst ourselves. But I know there are new faces today, so I just want to say this is an annual event, and it's put together to bring us together, to share the love. I heard just yesterday on NPR that social connection is like positive medication because it really does nourish us in so many ways. So put your thinking caps on, because the team that is overseeing this consists of Mike Greenwood, Mary Hadley. Would you guys mind standing up, because people are going to connect with you? Mike Greenwood, Mary Hadley, Andrea Sambrook, Kimberly Gray, myself, and Liam Batches Greenwood. So what we want all of you to do, thank you folks, is get your thinking caps on for creative ways in which you can bring us together. And because we've done this event before, many of you sitting right here know that you've been a winner of a raffle dinner or themed reality. The terrific thing is that our concentration will be in the month of October. We will culminate with a luncheon and drawing here on November 3rd. And just to let you know, people have been thinking about this already, because we happen to have a themed movie night showing Manhattan shorts at Andrea's and food to match what's going to be shown. That's an interesting concept. Chocolate babka bread that apparently will be delivered in December as treats, and hikes around the trail around Middlebury, TAM hikes, games, pizza and games here at CVUUS during one of the school vacations, pies from the Rhubarb Fest, rhubarb crisp with ice cream from the Rhubarb Cafe. So people are getting creative. Put your thoughts together. See me if you have more questions. The joy is that everybody gets to put in tickets for what they'd like to do, and as we come together during the year, it's such a wonderful way. Even those of us that have been here for many years, it's such fun to learn new things when we're actually sitting with folks doing something together. And it's not just all food related, but it's also services you can offer. And just come see us if you have any questions, those members of the team. Thanks.
Thank you, Marnie. The most consistent, and one could argue the most important pathway to connection is the offering that we take up every week, which is used up in part to support the work of the congregation itself, and is given away, half of it, to organizations that are doing the work in the community and in the world that our values tell us is most important. This month we are sharing the offering with Oxfam, and specifically their work in Gaza, their relief work in Gaza, which has taken many forms in this year. Most importantly, if you have ever wondered how the people in Gaza are actually getting access to safe water or bathing or toilet needs, there are organizations on the ground there that are working on this, and Oxfam is focusing on helping them. So I just want you to think about that, because the gift that you're about to give, which you can do online or you can do in person and you can do tomorrow if you don't have a way to do it today, is actually going to help people in Gaza live through the tragedy and crisis that they are in. So this morning's offering will now be most gratefully received. You're all invited to rise in body or spirit. Together we share, and by this
It has been a week of living, a week of happiness and sadness, joys and concern, milestones and passages. And I have 3 yellow cards. Okay, from Mike Greenwood. Mike says, bravo to all those who participated, attended, and organized this year's Clifford Symposium, sponsored by Middlebury College. We were well represented in every aspect of this 3-day event. Bravo. The next one is from Elio Farley. So glad to see you. Been so grateful for the mid-Pride excitement. CVUUS is a fabulous sponsor, and I hope you all join me on Saturday, October 12th for a spooky, joyous, and family-friendly festival. More information on mid-Pride. Thank you. And this is from Ollie Coltrera. Ollie writes, I am planning on moving to the Boston area. Late this fall, to be closer to my partner, Casey, who has visited CVUUS with me a few times. I will be sad to leave Vermont, and we'll be sad to have you leave. I'll be sad to leave Vermont, this community, and my housemates and chosen family, Margie and Jordan Young, whom I met through this congregation. CVUUS was the first place I found community when I moved here after college 6 years ago, and I will be forever grateful for this first spiritual home. We love you, Ollie, and we will miss you. Come back.
If people didn't know, they might think that Boston is a really terrible place. Which some people might think, but that's not what we meant. That's not what we meant. Let's take a moment to take a breath, to settle in a little bit more into this space, this hour, this company with each other, in some moments of reflection and meditation, first in spoken words and then in shared silence. Our hearts are so full in this beautiful, warm and friendly and wonderful time of the year when it's easy to forget that it's not always like this. Our hearts are full too of sadness and anger. Not least of all this morning for the people of Birmingham, Alabama. I don't know whether you've heard that there was another mass shooting in the center of Birmingham. I don't know the numbers of people who were killed by several gunmen, apparently. They have no motives yet. It's in a part of the city that I've been in, and probably a number of you have too. It's a lovely area where people gather on a Saturday night. Let us hold the families affected, and let us hold the law enforcement people who are trying to understand and trying to respond. And all this week, many of us have been thinking about our unhoused neighbors, especially the people who were able to stay for a while in motels and have now reached their 80th night and have had to leave, which makes us think of our unhoused neighbors who were not counted in any state program, the people who don't know the comfort that most of us do of having a place to go home to, a bed that is ours. And also the people, so many people who work in government, in nonprofit agencies, in churches and other organizations that are doing their best to help. At this time, we can treasure all those we're thinking of. We can do what we can to help. And you can remember to treasure yourself and your spirit as well. For you are a beautiful part of this world. A part of a poem called White Dove by Dana Folds. In the shared quiet, an invitation arises like a white dove lifting from a limb and taking flight. Come and live in truth. Take your place in the flow of grace. Draw aside the veil you thought would always separate your heart from love. All you ever longed for is before you in this moment, if you dare draw in a breath and whisper, yes. Let us rest for a moment in the silence.
The Fountain by Denise Levertov. Don't say there is no water to solace the dryness at our hearts. I have seen the fountain springing out of the rock wall and you drinking there. And I too, before your eyes, found footholds and climbed to drink the cool water. The woman of that place, shading her eyes, frowned and watched, but not because she grudged the water, only because she was waiting to see we drank our fill and were refreshed. Don't say there is no water. That fountain is there among its scalloped green and gray stones. It is still there and always there with its quiet song and strange power to spring in us up and out through the rock.
So this is my favorite time of year. Anybody else? I know, all the other seasons are wonderful too. But these sharp blue skies, warm sunlight through yellow leaves, cooler air that seems somehow to give more energy. On a day like that, the very world conspires to make more joy and hope available to life. Larger hopes and greater energies, we need them now in this early fall, in these days of new beginnings and continuing struggles in this time of urgency and opportunity. Years ago, when my children were small and we lived in Maine, my son's school took a whole day off in September. This was not a day to stay home. On that one special day, the whole school assembled bright and early at the foot of Bradbury Mountain. Anybody know Bradbury Mountain? Carl does. Brad does. Bradbury Mountain is actually pretty small as mountains go, but it's actually officially a mountain. So the day began with games and ended with a picnic, and in between, everybody hiked the mile or so up the mountain, all the way to the rocky summit. It wasn't very far, but it could take quite a while. First graders were often in the lead, scooting past fourth graders who were engrossed in gathering pine needles and finding bugs. And nearly everyone moved faster than the eighth graders, who traveled in teenage clumps. Teachers climbed too, and administrators, and more than a few accompanying parents. The climb was only finished when everybody made sure that everybody else had reached the top. It is a wonderful thing to stretch one's lungs and soul and legs if you can do it. September is a great time to try it. Mountains can be climbed in other months, of course, but it does seem that there's a particular kind of energy about now, inspiring courage and persistence and hope, as well as perhaps soberness. Virtues we need when so many new ventures begin, like entering a new school or starting a new job or moving to Boston or joining a congregation or working on an election. Perhaps it is the turning of the earth away from the fertility and heat of summer toward the crisp, bright clarity of autumn, urging us to turn away from complacency and toward boldness. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in this season urge us to acknowledge the past year's shortcomings and turn with renewed hope and resolution toward our promises for the year to come. integrity, honesty, humility, faith, good values to carry with us as we climb through life's rockier passages. Challenge can be daunting, and it can also be good, and if we know this and forget, there are any number of stories to remind us that we human beings, are capable of more courage and faith and boldness and strength of will than our frail physical selves might seem able to carry. Children climb mountains. Communities survive wars. People take up the struggle against corrupt and corrupting cultures and corporations and governments, and other people join them, and sometimes justice is won. In the Christian calendar, the holiday that captures the essence of this season is the Feast of St. Michael the Archangel on September 29th, a celebration known as Michaelmas in some parts of Europe, and at least one small school in Maine. So remember Michael? Any of you remember enough Bible to remember Michael? Okay, I'm going to remind you. Michael shows up, he's an archangel, and he shows up at several important catastrophe points in more than one religious tradition. Michael has the rare distinction of appearing with important roles in Jewish and Christian and Islamic scripture. He is the strongest, most fearless, most brilliant fighter in all of them. In the Quran, Michael is described as having wings the color of green emerald, covered in saffron hairs, each of them containing 1,000,000 faces. In the book of Revelation, Michael leads the charge in the only heavenly battle Jewish or Christian scripture ever mentions. A dragon appears with a multitude of the forces of evil at the very doors of heaven. Michael and his angels fight them, throwing them all down out of heaven, down here on earth with the rest of us. In all of these stories, Michael does the right thing. He defends the innocent, he protects the good, he never backs down, always doing what must be done. The kind of thing we mortals fear because we know too well our own weakness and how we don't really like to fail. At Michaelmas, we're encouraged to learn from Michael's example. That's the whole idea. When the air has cooled and the whole world is turning, we can find the strength to fight whatever dragons we've been avoiding, to climb the mountains in front of us, whatever they might be, and to remember our own strength and goodness. Michaelmas made some sense to me when I first encountered it on those September mountain hikes. I was taught as a child, if there's a problem, a need, a challenge, then you got to tackle it head on. Don't expect somebody else to do it. Don't wait until tomorrow. Do what needs to be done. And if it doesn't work the first time, then try again, try another angle, try harder, but don't give up. Anybody else got any of those messages? Okay, we'll talk later. There is much in our Unitarian and Universalist heritage that resonates with this Michael-like boldness and determination. We revere our ancestors who did and said what they believed was true and necessary, who stood up and said no to what their reason told them was wrong, though others called them heretics and worse. Being responsible is a good thing, isn't it? We work hard, we try harder, the world is stubborn and resistant. The solitary warrior for truth and goodness might be brilliant and magnificent, but they're still solitary. And it is important not to confuse all this striving for perfection with perfection itself. A few years after I learned about Michaelmas, I saw the movie Michael. Does anybody remember that movie? I am definitely showing my age, but Johanna remembers it too. It is indeed the story of the Archangel Michael. But the way that John Travolta portrays that brave warrior angel bears very little resemblance to the stories I remember from Catholic school. Michael first appears as a large, unshaven, slightly overweight figure who eats far, far too much sugar and who is, in the first scene, rummaging in the refrigerator for a beer, as I recall. His social skills are unconventional. And he has the most magnificent wings, though they look like they kind of need to be combed or cleaned or something, but they're magnificent, and they stretch from his shoulders all the way to his knees. So I'll remind you, in the movie, Michael has taken up the cause of a lonely older woman, played by Jean Stapleton, who is struggling to survive all by herself, running a threadbare motel in Nebraska on a remote road where the truckers don't come anymore since the interstate went in. She is at the end of her rope and the end of her money. Michael shows up in answer specifically to her prayers. He moves into her house, and on her behalf, he smites a bank. The scene is somehow inspiring as well as hilarious. The bank officers turn down the woman's request for an extension when she goes to, for her appointment in the afternoon. And then later that day, after everyone has safely left the building, a sudden wind comes up and the bank building is leveled. Just the bank, nothing around it. It is so satisfying to see meanness leveled by justice. As the story continues, however, we learn that Michael's real task in this, his 26th and last visit to Earth, is not smiting banks. It is to rescue a man who has shut himself off from his own heart. The man, whose name is Quinlan, is a reporter for a Chicago tabloid, and he's heard about this angel in Nebraska, so he goes there to get an exclusive. Quinlan is jaded, he's scarred by life, he doesn't care anymore whether things are true or not. But as they all travel on a long car trip back to Chicago, since Michael doesn't like to fly, this reporter, who has stopped loving or even believing in goodness, is changed. All of them are changed. Quinlan and Quinlan's friend, and Michael, and the young woman that we know right from the beginning Quinlan is destined to fall in love with. They're all changed by their time with this very human angel who is so deeply in love with earthly life that it's impossible for those around him not to fall in love with it too. Peter says I should tell you about the time that Michael is having a head-butting contest with a bull in a field, but it's too hard to describe, so just get the movie out. Michael laughs at his own jokes infectiously. He dazzles people in the diners where they stop to eat. He insists on seeing amazing sights like the world's biggest ball of twine and the world's largest nonstick frying pan. Apparently these are real things. So here's the point. Michael's power is not his physical strength or even his angelic miracles. Angels can't change the nature of the world, he explains. They can only do small miracles and only so many of those. Michael can't make anything happen by himself. He is powerful because he generates a force field of delight and joy, of a profound faith that goodness is here, right here among us. This Michael is a very human angel. He loves life. He loves the world, and he can't stay. He's only here on earth for a little time, and he uses that time to boldly perform small miracles, shaking people out of their ruts and assumptions, making them laugh when laughter had faded almost completely. Each of us is here for only a little time, and none of us can change the nature of the world all by ourselves. So what does love require of us? I think to believe in life, to believe in love, to believe in ourselves and one another. This is way too simple, probably. And sometimes, maybe most of the time, we do have the power to use our little bit of time boldly, to place our will and our minds and our hope in service of this world, expecting better of people and of life than we have any reason to. Whatever our weaknesses and flaws, we are all capable of more than whatever it takes to get through the day. And all of us have time for some bold, good, right actions. We can shake people up, make them laugh, demand justice, make mistakes, learn, and try again. What more can you do? I think it's interesting that several major religious traditions hold that we can do more, that we are capable of climbing the mountains of our lives, of asking and granting forgiveness, not least of all to ourselves, trying to get the balance right. And if all these great religions think we can do more, be more just, happier, more peaceful, more generous, then who are we to disbelieve it? Life is full of dragons and mountains. We can slay those dragons or befriend them. We can climb almost anything when we help each other. September is a good time to begin. So may it be. Let us sing one more time. This hymn is in the Teal hymnal. It's number 1029, and it's called Love. Love knocks and waits for us to hear. Jen chose this hymn. I didn't know it at all, and it's exactly right for today, so thank you, Jen.
I do believe this is a new song for you. So to help you out, I'm going to play through the melody once, and then the choir will sing the first verse with you just listening, so you can listen to it twice to get the hang of it, and then we will all sing it together, the 4 verses, okay?
The closing words today are from the poet David White. Sometimes, if you move carefully through the forest, breathing like the ones in the old stories, who could cross a shimmering bed of leaves without a sound, you come to a place whose only task is to trouble you with tiny but frightening requests, conceived out of nowhere, but in this place beginning to lead everywhere. Requests to stop what you are doing right now, and to stop what you are becoming while you do it. Questions that can make or unmake a life, questions that have patiently waited for you, questions that have no right to go away. I hope that you will join me in our words that we're saying together as we extinguish the chalice.